Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is Empowering Astrology for January 10th through 16th, 2022. So it's further in a new year. We are getting used to Capricorn season at this point. In fact, this week we are actually starting to come to some of the final legs of Capricorn season. So just sort of a reminder is that this is the season when we start to make plans, we start to think about real adult decisions, we build, we construct, we put things back into order. That's what we do. And I know I talked about last week and resolutions and maybe how that's a word that not everybody likes to use, but on some level, this is a time to resolve or to think about how do we use the energies of the new year in the best possible way. Even though it seems arbitrary, we just sort of, decide that this is the start of a new year, but there is a new energy that comes in. And so we have to be really intentional with this energy. But that said, if you are watching live, hello, thank you for joining me this evening. If you are not, I know many of you watch the replay on Facebook, on YouTube, on Spotify, and even those on Instagram. Thank you very much. Do say hello. Tell me where you're watching from. It's always fun. I have Sagittarius rising, so I like to know where everybody else is in the world. I think it's pretty neat. But just to introduce myself for those who don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium here in the New York City area. I'm actually just right outside Manhattan in Jersey City, New Jersey. And every week we gather to talk about the astrology. How do we use it? How do we work with it? And as some of you may have heard me say in the past, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. And sometimes there's the astrology part and it's saying it's time to make a change, but then there's the us part and we're sort of in the way. So sometimes we get stuck, and that's okay. And maybe this week, especially as Mercury turns retrograde later this week, it's a time to get unstuck. And that's, I do want to talk a lot about Mercury retrograde because I think every time we get to this point, every 3 months, it's Mercury retrograde time again, like clockwork. I have to sort of say some things as an astrologer, but at the same time, I want to challenge you all to change the narrative on Mercury retrograde. So like I said, we're deeper into Capricorn season. It's interesting, like the beginning of the year, it's kind of not typically, this is just for 2022, of course. The first 2 weeks of this year are kind of on the quieter side. Maybe it's not quiet in your life right now, but just astrologically, it's a little bit on the quieter side. But that's going to start to change, especially as we get into later this week and especially into next week. So let's think of this week, January 10th through 16th, 2022, as a preparation for the Cancer full moon that's going to be next week, on the 18th. Don't quote me on that. And then also Uranus turning turning direct at 10 degrees of Taurus next week, and that's a lot of big energy that's on the horizon. So like I said, I want to get us all prepared for it. But speaking of getting prepared, just your friendly reminder, I did a webinar back in December, which gives you a 2-hour look at the astrology of 2022. Half of that, of course, is looking at it from a sign-by-sign perspective, but how 2022 has these very distinct points where life changes, life pivots. And one of the major drivers this week, more like next week, this is the thing that we have to talk about next week, is that the lunar nodes are changing. They're going from They're going from Gemini and Sagittarius, and they're going now into Taurus and Scorpio. So right on the cusp of the lunar nodes changing. And if you're thinking, Katie, I have no idea what the lunar nodes are, I just know my sun sign. This is where we're starting to open up our astrological vocabulary. So the lunar nodes, they are 2 points in the sky. They are not planets. You cannot see them, but they are mathematical points. And these are the 2 points that make eclipses happen. So for the last 18 months, since May of 2020, the lunar nodes have been in Gemini and Sagittarius. Ergo, we've been having eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius. Every time there is a new or full moon in alignment with the lunar nodes, we have an eclipse. So back, for example, on December 4th of 2021, we had a solar eclipse in Sagittarius because the new moon was within a certain amount of degrees from the lunar nodes. Okay, so we got that down. But the lunar nodes, they talk about a collective and also personal story arc. You know, where are we headed towards? What's true north? What direction are we collectively being led towards? We've been working to head towards Gemini over the last 18 months. You know, that's this idea that we all need new perspectives, new ideas. We need to weigh our options. We need a lot of different potentials, but then the work that we've had to do, this is where the South Node is. South Node's in Sagittarius. So the collective work has been around travel, truth, faith, convictions. What do I stand for? What do I believe in? The fact that we can't travel as readily as we used to over the last 18 months. But the eclipses are going to start to switch, and they already did that on November 19th. We had our first eclipse in Taurus, but the nodes were not in Taurus and Scorpio yet. So starting next week, we got a lot to talk about next week, the lunar nodes are going to start to shift into Taurus and Scorpio, and that means that collectively we are now heading towards Taurus and sort of looking at our karma South Node in Scorpio. So this is, like I said, it's a whole other conversation we're going to have next week, but to move let me take a step back. Scorpio and Taurus are two opposite signs, and they talk a lot about safety, stability, security. Can I trust you? Can I open up to you? Can I be intimate? Can I be vulnerable? There's a sense of sensuality in Taurus, sexuality in Scorpio, money. Taurus and Scorpio are money signs. Taurus is the money that I make. It's the resources I have. It's the things I have available to me. But there's a sense of wealth and collective resource in Scorpio, finance, for example. So we're really going to be collectively looking at themes around money, income, material stability, trust. Also that sense of looking under the rock, the proverbial rock, so to speak, with the South Node in Scorpio, meaning the things that we haven't wanted to look at personally, collectively. Scorpio is the sign that teaches us about doing our shadow work, meaning looking into our shadow, looking into our blind spots, into our unconscious, and trying to discover the hidden motivations behind the things that we do, and maybe even the things that other people do. Like I said, this is a whole other big conversation. We just got a lot of things starting to shift and to move next week, but sort of, here we are, the week of January 10th through 16th, 2022. As we start the week, like I said, it's a little bit on the quieter side. We are, on Tuesday, January 11th, we have Mars square Neptune. So just your reminder, Mars has been in Sagittarius since I believe it's December 13th. Mars is what drives us and motivates us. It's been picking up on the energies of Sagittarius. We are very driven and motivated to learn more, to explore, to have adventures, to talk about what we believe in, to share our opinions, and maybe even share our opinions indelicately. But that said, Mars is picking up on eclipse degrees. Maybe these sort of bigger themes over the last 18 months have come to a head for you. But Mars is going to make something called a square to Neptune. And Neptune's kind of an interesting planet because it doesn't work in the same way that Mars or Mercury or Venus works in. Neptune is what's called a evolutionary planet. It's a modern addition to astrology, and by modern I mean it was discovered in the 1840s. But Neptune, it's outside of the canon of traditional astrology. So what is it doing? Well, Neptune is trying to get us to grow and evolve by any means possible. It's just doing it in different ways, and say it's, cohorts of Pluto and Uranus. Neptune dissolves the boundaries between this world and the next world and reminds us that actually we're not always in control as much as we'd like to think we are. And that's the thing, when Mars squares Neptune, we have to somehow reconcile our desires, our willpower, with something greater than ourselves. And there is that sense of maybe frustration with Mars square Neptune, or a need to surrender, to choose our battles, and to choose our battles wisely. Because sometimes when we run full force into Neptune, we get that sense of like confusion or loss or misunderstanding, and disillusionment, for example, or even caught in our illusions. And so as we sort of feel that Neptune energy pushing and pulling on our Mars, we have to sort of learn to go with the flow. And I think that's something that's been a little bit hard, especially with these eclipses that we've been having at the last 18 months. They've been square Neptune. We have not been in control and power as we would like to think we are. We haven't had the level of agency as we'd like. And so Neptune can sort of say, well, there's something pulling outside of us, some force greater than us, some narrative greater than us. So there is that sense this week that we need to either get out of our own way, learn to figure out how to make our needs, our wants, our desires in harmony with something greater than ourselves. Neptune in its highest expression, it's altruistic, it's spiritual. It's not about what I want. It's about what the greater whole wants. It's about universality. It's the collective. And so how do I align my actions with something that's in support of the universal, of spirit, and of the collective? So that's a little bit of a subtler influence this week. Neptune doesn't exactly make us feel things the same way that other planets do. It sort of pushes and pulls at us like the moon. This is why it's a little bit harder to get a line on Neptune like the other planets. But if you're feeling a little bit sluggish, tired, it feels like you're trying to swim against the current, don't swim against the current this week. Maybe just go with the flow and see where it takes you, for better, hopefully for better, not worse, of course. As we get to later this week on January 14th, that's the big headliner for this week. Mercury turns retrograde at 10 degrees of Aquarius. So I don't know if you all have been paying attention, at least the videos I've been doing over the last however many months, and I'm talking a lot about, since 2021, Saturn square Uranus. So Saturn has been in Aquarius, making something called a square, 90 degrees, to Uranus and Taurus. So this is why 2021 was a time of, for many people, seismic change. Sort of this 1 foot in an old life, 1 foot in a new life, something that you've heard me say over and over again in 2021. Well, here we are in 2022. We still have 1 foot in an old life, 1 foot in a new life, but we're going to start to see that we have to start to move in a new direction. We can't keep holding on to the past. It's funny, I had a very literal experience with this. Like, it's kind of personal, but like I have like plantar fasciitis from time to time. It went away and then it kind of came back during it's one of the worst of the pandemic. And I feel like a few days ago, I couldn't even move my left leg. I felt like it was this literal manifestation of like 1 foot was just like so desperately holding on to an old life, and I'm like literally trying to like move myself. So for me, I often have like these physical experiences with energy, but maybe for you, you've seen it in your own way, and it's hard to really step out of something that is just such a deep groove and pattern. So Mercury, it's right on that square. Now, even though we had the last square on December 24th, its energy, it's still with us into 2022. In fact, the eclipses in May, April, May, October, November, they're going to pick up on this energy of Saturn square Uranus. So Mercury retrograde means on one level, the planet Mercury is appearing to go backwards, not really going backwards. It's just an optical illusion. This is your friendly reminder that every planet, except for the sun and the moon, turn retrograde. Mercury just does it the most frequently of all the planets. In fact, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto spend about 5 months out of the year retrograde. That's a long time retrograde. So you have to sort of think of retrogrades as this natural push and pull. The tide goes in, the tide goes out, yin and yang energy, active and receptive. So Mercury, it turns retrograde. It was last retrograde, I think the end of September 2021. It happens every 3 months. Here we are again. So I just kind of personal rail against the dominating narrative around Mercury retrograde equals bad. I'm not saying things don't happen, things don't get weird, but we can work with it and at least look at it a little bit differently. So Mercury, ideas, communication, analysis, information, choice. It is the planet of choice. We have to pull back. We have to reflect. We have to intuit. We can't use our thinking mind. We have to use our intuitive mind because that's more yin energy. Yin is receptive, not active. So this is your periodic reminder as well that we can't always barrel forward. We have to take a step back and reflect and analyze. Think about Mercury and its dual rulership of Gemini and Virgo. And with that dual rulership, you see the two sides of Mercury. You see the active ruler of Gemini is gathering information, ideas, there's a sense of movement. But with Virgo, it's receptive, it's analysis, it's that editorial eye that Virgo is so well known for. And that's sort of that critical eye that Virgo is known for. That's more receptive energy. It sort of takes in all this information of Gemini, it tries to put it together and make sense of it. So we are making sense of something over the next 3 weeks. Mercury is going to go all the way back to 24 degrees of Capricorn, which is approximately where Mercury was in the sky at the end of December. So on some level, we are rewinding back to events from late December and getting, looking at things from a different perspective, connecting the dots differently, connecting the dots, period. And then Mercury will go to direct on February 3rd, and then we'll see things from a different perspective, maybe. Here's what I was trying to say earlier. Mercury is doing so in something called a conjunction to Saturn, a square to Uranus. This Mercury retrograde's got a little bit of a flavor to it. Mercury in Aquarius is typically a very analytical, intellectual place for Mercury to be. This is about big ideas. Aquarius is a big idea sign. It's, if Saturn rules Capricorn, it rules Aquarius, then the things that we're building are physical. In Capricorn, we're building ideas and information and systems and networks in Aquarius. So some big idea, maybe it's a big idea in our life, maybe it's a collective big idea. We have to sort of turn around and look at things differently. We have to reflect and connect the dots. Mercury is making something called a square to Uranus. So there's this idea that maybe this week or maybe around, going even into next week, there's something that illuminates a choice or illuminates how we see things. And, maybe it's an awakening, because Uranus talks about the energies of awakening. It's a planet that, much like Neptune, is trying to get us to grow and evolve by any means possible. Uranus demands radical authenticity. So maybe the choices we've been making aren't in alignment with Uranus. They are not radically authentic, or they are not a choice for us. And we have to go back and look at things a bit differently. So I'm sort of saying this in case there's a little bit of some rumbles this week, especially if you are a Gemini or Virgo. You may feel this even more because your planet Mercury is stationing retrograde in a square to Uranus. And I even say this for my Pisces and my Sagittarius, because Mercury is what's called an angular ruler for you. So this is a time where the light bulb might go off. You might get unexpected information. A conversation may be refreshingly different, or it may challenge you to think differently in some way. That's the thing about Uranus. It's a little unpredictable. It's like a lightning bolt. It's like that spark of awareness, that new flash of consciousness. But whatever is happening, it's part of a narrative that takes us back to 2021 and honestly takes us back to May 2018, March 2019, and those were the months that Uranus first went to Taurus. This is why astrology is never just one moment in time. It's a series of moments and times. We have to really go back and follow the thread and see how these different moments start to connect and start to get a picture about how this astrology connects to us. It reveals something to us, and it helps to shape our world. So this is sort of my soapbox about Mercury retrograde. I mean, of course, do your due diligence, but maybe you start a relationship during Mercury retrograde. Maybe you end a relationship. Maybe you move. I moved once during Mercury. I mean, I moved here. I know you all kind of were in the midst of that. I did that during Mercury retrograde. You know, sometimes you just have to make decisions and see things different, your own way, and listen to your intuition. Maybe it's not the best time for you to do something, and you do need to wait till after Mercury goes direct on February 3rd, but that's up for you to decide. So that's just my, every 3 months we have to have this conversation about Mercury retrograde, because people start sending me emails and messages about freaking out about how they had to buy a car or do this. So just do your due diligence, back things up, get receipts, make sure there's a plan B, have patience, and maybe this is a Mercury retrograde where you do something differently, you choose something differently, and you get out of your own way. We'll see. That said, we all are also having Sun conjunct Pluto on January 16th. This is what's called the annual conjunction of the Sun and Pluto. Over the last 14 years, Pluto has been in Capricorn, so the Sun-Pluto conjunction has been in Capricorn. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but this is just to put some things on your farther away radar. But Pluto, starting in March of 2023, just a little over a year away, will go into Aquarius for the first time since the 1780s and the 1790s. That's a big deal. That will be a really interesting month because some other things are happening in March 2023. But that said, it's sort of this yearly check-in on a story that's been unfolding since 2008. This is a story, both personal and collective. You all have Capricorn somewhere in your astrological chart where you have been tearing something down and profoundly rebuilding it, transforming it, transmuting it. And this is sort of your check-in on that progress. Sun-Pluto conjunction can be a power day. It can be a day to sort of proverbially throw things into the fire, to be reborn, to transform, and it's like I said, it's a power day. So use that as you will. So those are the big highlights. I mean, there's a couple of sextiles tucked away in there, but those are by and large very quiet energies. But like I said, you go into next week, I believe it's the 17th or the 18th, we have a Cancer full moon. This is the Cancer full moon that's going to be opposite Pluto. We're going to have Uranus turn direct at 10 degrees of Taurus. The nodes are switching signs, and so we can kind of deduce that the story is changing next week. So let's go around the zodiac and see where Mercury retrograde is pulling back things for you. And just another friendly reminder, listen for your sun sign and your rising sign. Some people like to listen for their moon sign. They get really great information. If you're thinking which is correct, they are both correct. I know it sounds crazy. And I don't know, I personally sometimes get a lot of great information from what's called my chart ruler. That's a little bit of an intermediate point, but for those that know their astrology and know their chart ruler, you can listen for that sign as well. My chart ruler is in Leo, so sometimes that Leo information hits a little bit close to home. So, Aries. So Mercury is turning retrograde in something called your 11th sign. Aquarius Is your 11th sign the same sign that Saturn has been in since December of 2020? So yeah, I have to go back for a second. And with that in mind, this is a time when you need to sort of rewind something, either with a friend or your social circle or your community. But another way of looking at this is that this is about you looking ahead towards the future. And maybe you've been making some big choices or even contemplating some big choices, especially with Saturn there, about what you would like your future to look like. But Mercury, I mean, it's not that you can't make choices or decisions at this time, of course not, but you may need to see things from a different perspective. And maybe that's where the Uranian energy is going to come in. Aries, you do have Uranus in your second sign. Second sign is about money, income, value, material stability. So maybe this is a time to walk back and reflect on whatever choices you're making, but seeing how value and worth plays into the story. Maybe you thought something was not a valuable choice, but maybe, this week, next week, week after is going to teach you actually it is a valuable choice. Maybe you need to look at your own value differently, or maybe even look at how your community, your friends, and your social circle value you. Of course, friends are incredibly valuable, period, and this is a time maybe where you need to focus on your friendships, strengthening them, rebuilding them. Saturn in Aquarius certainly isn't always the kindest of energies when it's going through our 11th sign, because it can get very pare down your friend list, or go through your contacts and kind of delete the contacts and people that don't really need to be in your life anymore. But that said, use this energy to intuit what you think your future should look like, to feel into maybe what a new perspective on the bigger picture of your life should look like, the directions that you're heading, and look at any themes or threads around money and income and value, but also your community and your social circle. Taurus. So Taurus, just maybe to kind of get ahead of things for a short bit, Uranus will turn direct in your sign. This will be next week. I can't think of the date off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around the middle of next week. With that in mind, you may feel that this week, in advance, things are starting to shake and to shift. Now, if you're born approximately, I think it's like early May, you're going to feel this energy the most, because Uranus is pivoting on your sun. I'm going to say it over and over again, Taurus. This is this really powerful time in your life to make big changes, lasting changes. I realize these are changes that maybe in your heart of hearts you don't want to make, you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel safe, but this is a leap of faith, and this is a time for you to get out of your way. And so a client asked me, well, what does it mean to get out of your way? Getting out of your way means that you are actively making choices for things, or not choosing things that are actively working against you. You're choosing something else, for example. But that said, sort of the tectonic plates of your life, Taurus, is starting to shift and move. Mercury is turning retrograde in your professional life, your 10th sign. So this is picking up on a larger story that's been unfolding since the end of 2020, where you need to take your professional life seriously. You need to sort of consolidate and work hard and to achieve, and also to define what do you want to be when you grow up. So maybe you thought you had a plan. Maybe Mercury retrograde is helping you to have a new plan. And to see things from a different perspective. There is this sort of push and pull that's happening this week between you and your professional life. See how that shows up for you, Taurus. This is a time when maybe you need to make some changes in your professional life, or the personal changes that you've been making now actually have to reflect in your ambitions, your goals, what you work and strive for, and also the position, the role that you play in the world. But this is, for you, maybe a week, and even next week some shakeups, something to be worried about. I think that's the thing about Venus retrograde for you right now, Taurus, is that it's time for you to sort of see what you stand for and what you believe in and how you see the world differently. Gemini. Mercury is turning retrograde in what's called your ninth sign. And the ninth sign is about, well, it really shapes how we see the world. It's it shapes what we stand for and our convictions and our truth. It's also higher education and travel. On a very mundane level, if you are doing some sort of travel, I just have to sort of say this as an astrologer, that maybe you need to make sure you have a plan B with whatever your travel plans are, because it's kind of a classic Mercury retrograde thing, especially in a travel part of the chart, that whatever plans you had going into the 14th, maybe you have to pivot and do things differently after the 14th. Hopefully not. Always have a plan B, especially with Mercury retrograde. That's just due diligence, of course. But maybe this is a time where you are looking more deeply at what you believe in, what you stand for, what you think is right and wrong, what your truth is. And on some level, having to reevaluate what you are saying, what you're sharing, what opinions, what knowledge you're sharing. Maybe you need to see things differently. I don't know. Maybe you need to weigh different ways of seeing things. The thing about this sort of push and pull with this Mercury retrograde, Gemini, and you are ruled by Mercury. So this is a time where matters of faith and truth may be very personal to you. It's such a deeply, it's such a deeply existential time for Gemini, because you have Uranus in your 12th sign, and you have Mercury and also Saturn in your 9th sign. And these are two areas of the astrology where you have to figure out what you believe in, but you just do it in different ways, because the 9th, it's about going out there into the world, getting educated, exploring. It's very external, but in the 12th, it's very internal. You are seeking and exploring and getting that information and that truth from within. So maybe for some Geminis, it's a crisis of faith, a crisis of truth, a crisis of authenticity. I know that word crisis is a little bit strong, but you're caught in a little bit of some tight spots this week, Gemini, going into next week, if I'm just being completely honest. But maybe on another way of looking at this, you're going to really see things differently on the other side of this, and maybe present options, ideas that you didn't have access to before. Just a little housekeeping for a moment. Yes, when I say 9th sign, I mean 9th house. Aquarius is Gemini's 9th house. So I just say 9th sign, since we are looking at this from a larger solar house perspective. It's just easier than saying house, and especially because people are like, what's a house? But yeah, that's Gemini. Cancer. So Aquarius is your 8th sign. So Mercury turning retrograde is picking up on a much larger story that's been unfolding since 2020. And this is one Cancer where you have to do a lot of deep inner work. You have to really heal the past, the things that you've been holding on to, in some cases traumas. But it's a bit of a heavy emotional time for Cancer. And I think with Mercury turning retrograde in that's kind of square to Uranus, how do you really detach from something, let go, not have sentimentality, which is so much a part of how you express yourself as a sign, is to be sentimental, to be attached to the past, that I think that this is an opportunity for you just to walk away from something. Even if it's just internal, even if it's just on an emotional level, to just let go. Cancer, your 12th sign is Gemini. So part of this is sort of connecting to that sense of endings, letting go, maybe even a sense of resolution. But on some level, maybe as you walk back with this retrograde all the way to February 3rd, when Mercury turns direct, you're still working through something. You're still getting the information and the ideas, so that when you can move forward in a very different way in February. But that said, you have Uranus in your 11th, so there's something about community, friends, your social circle, but also your beliefs and how you see the future and sort of your goals and hopes and wishes for the future. So there is something where maybe some of the things that you're holding on to emotionally are negatively impacting, the possibilities of different futures. You have to understand, Cancer, is that the future isn't written. It's still unfolding moment by moment based on the choices that we make. So what, choices open up for you on a future level when you start to let certain things go. But it might be a little bit of a heavy week emotionally, Cancer, with Uranus turning direct next week. Maybe this is helping you to really see and have a different vision for your future than maybe you were even thinking about as you started the new year. Leo, Mercury is turning retrograde in your 7th sign, and the 7th sign is the sign of relationships for Leo. So this is kind of your reminder that Saturn has been in your 7th sign since December 2020. And what does Saturn want for each and every one of us? It wants relationship. And I mean that in a very broad sense. I don't necessarily mean that in a romantic relationship. But Saturn, when it goes through the 7th, it reminds us, it reminds you, Leo, that we can't do life alone. We need partnership, we need connection, we need to share the load of life, so to speak. And it's about building relationships and building alliances, learning to socialize and interact with people differently. That said, it can bring in a serious relationship if that is indeed relevant for you. So maybe a serious relationship has come in, maybe a new partnership has come in, and Mercury retrograde is sort of taking and putting your attention on this part of your life. And maybe you're weighing your options. Maybe you're not sure if this person is right for you, not right for you, if it's a left or a right and up or a down. And if you are currently in a relationship and maybe there's been some stress over the last year, with you and a primary partner, maybe Mercury retrograde is making or forcing a choice or getting you to see things from a different perspective, or maybe even helping to open up new opportunities to connect to a partner in a different way, to do the relationship in a different way. Because I think it's a reminder, the 7th is also, it's traditionally the sign of Libra, even though for you, you have a very different sign there, but it's about balance and equity. And how do you put balance and equity back into a relationship? That said, Leo, you do have Uranus in Taurus, which is your 10th sign. And so on some level, this is about your direction in life and how relationships and partnerships and alliances affect the direction that you put your life in. And maybe you're thinking, no, I want to go this way, but you've got a partner and they want to go that way. So there's like this kind of negotiation and trying to figure out where you and somebody line up. But that said, if there is an actual relationship concern during this retrograde, you may have to see where things are at after Mercury turns direct on the 3rd of February. But again, how do you put your relationships back into balance? How do you do things differently, choose things differently in a relationship? And I think by the time Mercury gets back into Aquarius in February, and I think by March it makes the conjunction, maybe March is going to be a major milestone with a relationship. Virgo. Now we're ready for Virgo. Virgo, you are ruled by Mercury. Mercury is your planet. It's like your boss, and it's hanging out in Aquarius, your 6th sign. So a lot of people don't realize this, but Virgo and Aquarius actually have a lot more in common than people realize, because Aquarius is Virgo's 6th sign, and Virgo is the 6th sign. So the past however many days and weeks, when Mercury would go into Aquarius, I think it was the beginning of the year, I think it was the 2nd of January. Anyway, this is a time where you're actually feeling very Virgo-like. It's about projects, organization, getting your life in order, putting things back in balance, focusing on health and wellness. Saturn has been in your sixth sign since December 2020. So this is by and large a time where Virgo, you have to take health and wellness seriously if you haven't already. For some Virgos, this is a time to really focus on making some lasting, positive, healthy changes. If you are a Virgo who already makes positive choices in their lives in regards to health and wellness, then this is something where you have to sort of look at things, recalibrate, do things differently, but by and large, keep doing what you're doing. But that said, Saturn is really trying to get the systems of your lives and networks of your life work humming and moving along. It's been a little bit, I think, a hard slog for Virgo in 2021. But I think it's just about putting a lot of new things into place. That's just my interpretation. But you can use this energy, Virgo, to really go back to an old project, to get organized, to clean out. Saturn loves cleaning out. It loves, especially in this part of the chart, it loves purity, it loves cleanliness, it loves sobriety. I know it's not a word we don't really talk about, but Saturn is the planet of sobriety. So how do you sort of get cleaned out during this time? You do have Uranus in your ninth sign. So sort of the push and the pull with this Mercury retrograde is about seeing things differently. You're halfway through, Virgo, a 7-year phase of your life where this is about really opening up your eyes to the world in a very different way. And Virgo, because you are an earth sign, sometimes you get very stuck in the way that you see things and what you believe in or what you subscribe to, even if it's a negative self-belief. So maybe you're using this retrograde to reassess, what you believe in and how that affects your health or how that affects your work or how does that affect your day-to-day life. But that's where a lot of the push and the pull is happening. Because Mercury is your planet, you are in a state of reflecting, turning in until February 3rd when Mercury turns direct at 24 degrees of Capricorn. Libra. Aquarius is your fifth sign. And so just a reminder, you've had Saturn in your fifth sign since December 2020. So by and large, this has been a time about you taking yourself and taking your talents seriously. Mercury in this part of the chart can make you very chatty, very curious, want to really express who you are, very creative on some level. But this is a time where also it's about taking the things that you believe in and using that to create and shape your life. Mercury turning direct is really pushing and pulling at this larger narrative that's been, for some Libras, it's about some self-destructive behavior. And how do you really take a look at old patterns around self-destruction? What does self-destruction look like? Well, it doesn't have to be dramatic. It's where we self-sabotage. It's where we get in our own way. It's where we choose things that are antithetical to our success and greater sense of who we are. And maybe this is a time, Libra, for you to really examine, well, who are you? And maybe who you thought you were going into New Year is not really who you are. Well, who are you? Well, that's something that you have to feel, Libra. It's not an intellectual thing that you can answer. You have to go within and maybe look at different facets of your personality, both the positives and the not so positives, the part of you that, maybe lacks confidence. But I don't believe that we're born in this life to be unconfident. I think that part of the work that we all do is to uncover what is truly us and what is truly not us, and to work and to perfect and to polish and to make beautiful the parts that actually really are us. So maybe there's a sense of inner work, inner reflection, maybe on a mundane level. It's about creativity. Maybe it's even something about children. The fifth sign is about children, and just sort of your reminder, Libra, that your planet Venus is retrograde. It will be retrograde until the end of January, so you're sort of walking back on a lot of things in general. And you do have Venus down in your fourth sign, so this is maybe a little bit of a sensitive and emotional time, one where you're pulling inward, kind of staying close to home. But in that sort of quiet, reflected period, really look at themes around personality, identity, persona, creativity, self-expression. Also fun, have some fun, and more importantly, Libra, get back to what makes you passionate and what lights that spark within you. Scorpio, where are we at? So Aquarius is your fourth sign. The fourth sign forms the foundation of your astrology chart. Over the past year, there's been a big emphasis on home and family roots and foundation. And maybe you've made a big move, maybe family have demanded more of your time and your energy. Maybe this is about duties and responsibilities in the home, household, or even duties and responsibilities to your parents, especially if they are getting older. But that said, Mercury in this part of the chart does make it more busy at home. Maybe you've had a lot of visitors, maybe there's been a lot of movement, maybe you're moving things around. So maybe on a home level, you have to go back and revisit something from the past. You have to make changes in the household, move things around. What's Mercury for you? Mercury is just a thing. Gemini is your 8th sign, Scorpio. So maybe some of the things that you are walking back and digging into have to deal with an 8th house matter. 8th house matter is finance, it's wealth, it's assets, it's inheritances, it's estates, but it's also secrets and maybe even family secrets or the things that we don't typically share unless you are in somebody's inner circle, especially your inner circle, Scorpio. So this is about deep emotional stuff coming up, and in that process, Scorpio, you're able to feel more safe, feel more grounded, maybe get more rooted in this time, and maybe approach this whole Saturn transit that you're going through a little bit differently. The push and the pull that's happening this week is with relationships. Scorpio, do not forget, you are about halfway into a 7-year period of completely reinventing how you connect, interact, socialize, partner, and relate to other people. This can be both on a broader level, a romantic level, or even speaking to your existing partnerships. Uranus turning direct next week certainly is bringing that narrative to a forefront. So, Scorpio, here you go again. Life is starting to shift and shake and move again. The fixed signs are not so fixed at the moment, but really use this Mercury retrograde to look back at the past, see things differently, look at a family matter differently, and maybe even to clear something up with a family member. Sagittarius, Aquarius is your 3rd sign. So don't forget, Saturn has been in Aquarius since December of 2020. So for you, Sagittarius, is the time for you to look at schooling, learning, ideas, information, choices, communication, how you communicate, for example. Saturn on some level is trying to get you to take your voice seriously, take communication seriously, even take your education seriously. Now, Mercury down in this part of the chart can make forth things are busy. Maybe you got things to do around town. Maybe there's a lot of movement and conversations, a lot more conversations than you normally have. Mercury turning retrograde may mean that you have to go back to a conversation that you had before. You need to, think about how you use your voice in a certain way, the words that you use, the choices that you make. Because Mercury is a relationship planet for you, it's also one of your career planets. This might be a time when some of the choices and the conversations and the words are related to relationships, other people, but also your career, the responsibilities that you have, and the direction that you're taking your life in. So this might be an important week in theory, Sagittarius, and even going into next week, because things are pivoting. And the idea is that Mercury will turn direct on February 3rd. You don't have all the ideas and the information. Really wait to see what comes out into February, before you sort of make any hard and fast decisions, Mercury will make that conjunction to Saturn. I believe it's in the beginning of March 2022. So you're still getting all the perspectives before you can make a serious choice in March. You do have Uranus in your sixth sign, so sort of the push and the pull is about the choices around health and wellness, choices about work and projects, and really some of the bigger changes you've been making in your day-to-day life and the structure of your day-to-day life since 2018, 2019. Capricorn. So Saturn is in your second sign. Mercury is turning retrograde in your second sign. So it's sort of your friendly reminder that the past year plus has been about money, income, material stability, material security, and even self-worth. Mercury turning retrograde is prompting you rather to look at your choices around spending, the things that you invest in, the things that you think are worth money or worth something, but maybe you need to see things from a different perspective. If you are spending a lot of money, maybe you have to go back and sort of balance the books. Do keep in mind that Saturn in general, when it's in the second sign, is looking over the books. It wants you to account for every last penny. I know it's annoying, but just my philosophy in life is do what Saturn wants, and life's a lot easier. Ironically, Saturn is your planet. So this is something personal for you. It's sort of your personal choices, how you use your voice, how you communicate, and the value of your voice, the value of what you have to say. The push and the pull is happening. Uranus is in your fifth sign. So it's like the value of you, the value of, something on a revealing who you truly are. That's what I think is actually happening with Uranus in your fifth sign. It's a time of radical authenticity, a radical self-discovery, the stripping away of the you that's not really you, the leaving behind the programming and the choices and the values that never really were yours. Capricorn in general is a sign that likes to run on the script. Maybe, Capricorn, this is not your script, somebody else's script, and use this Mercury retrograde to really look at what is your script. Aquarius, so a lot's happening in your sign. Mercury is turning retrograde in your sign. Saturn has been in Aquarius since December of 2020. So by and large for Aquarius, this has just been a big time. It's been a heavier time. Saturn can make you feel the weight of time, the weight of choice, the weight of responsibility. I know that doesn't sound very nice, but that's just sort of what Saturn is doing in Aquarius right now. And if you are Aquarius, maybe you are nodding your head and you're saying yes, because the idea is that this is the start of a 30-year chapter of your life. And I know you're thinking, holy moly, like 30 years. And I'm like, yes, Saturn will take 30 years to come back to where it is right now in the sky. So the things that you are stepping into, the choices that you're making, sort of the stakes that you're putting in the ground, they're big ones. These are things that are going to take you over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So maybe you've made some decisions in the last however many weeks and months, and Mercury is helping you to go back, to reevaluate, to plan and strategize for the future in a very different way. The thing is that you have Uranus down in your fourth sign. It's been there since 2018, 2019, and it's been shaking up the very foundation of your life. So home and family have been a big area of your life. Maybe you've made a major move. Maybe home and family have become a topic that they weren't before. But maybe on a more esoteric level, you need to come into this life more. And sometimes where Uranus is, it's like it shows where there's a disconnect. And maybe you've just not really been fully connected to this life. So how do you make some, serious major choices, really see things from a different perspective? Mercury turns direct on February 3rd. It makes what's called a conjunction to Saturn in early March. So something's playing out over the next 1 or 2 months, but this is again a part of a big cycle for you, Aquarius, and sort of setting your eyes on new horizons. And it's something about like what's going to really support and nourish and anchor your life at this time, and really look for themes around home and family, moves, putting down roots, for example. But Aquarius, you're like my fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and you, Aquarius. Life is not so fixed at the moment. Finally, Pisces. Pisces, Aquarius is your second sign. So that's not right. Aquarius is your 12th sign. Sorry. Pisces, Aquarius is your 12th sign. And so you've been in this very liminal space since the start of 2021. You sort of feel like the rest of the world is moving on, but meanwhile, you're like trying to sort through the past. You're trying to sort through all these things you've been holding on to. You have to understand that everybody in the zodiac gets to the point where Saturn reaches the 12th. It's a time of an end of an old cycle. Just go find an Aquarius and ask them about 2018, 2019, 2020 and their experiences, because it's a lot of what you're going through right now to some degree. This is about really shedding the past, shedding the attachment to the things that you have. I think Mercury and turning retrograde in this space is really trying to bring things up from your blind spots, your unconscious. Pay attention to your dreams, Pisces. Maybe you're getting messages through your dreams, or even intuitive messages with Mercury in that part of your chart. Speaking of intuition, the push and the pull between Mercury and Uranus is happening in your third. Uranus is in your third. So you are halfway through a larger story in your life, Pisces, where you are using your voice in a much different way. You have to use your voice in a much different way. And this is about really a radical authenticity in your voice. You have to understand, Pisces, that voice is two things. It's literally the words out of your mouth, but it's also the energy behind those words. And how do you really bring the fullness of yourself into what you have to say, the truth of yourself and what you have to say? But this is a time where you have to look at where you are afraid to speak, Mercury in the 12th, where you sometimes can lose your voice and reclaim it. But also looking at the choices of the things you've been holding on to, what you want to let go as you prepare for the next big chapter of your life. The thing I think with 2022 Pisces, it's like you got Jupiter, it's in your sign. You feel like on one level you're moving forward, but then there's a part of you that feels like it's still sorting out the past, and that's the Saturn and the 12th influence. So pay attention to your dreams, your intuition, see what's being revealed in your blind spots and how that's shaping how you think, listen, communicate, and reflect upon your life. So that is your look at the astrology for January 10th through 16th, 2022. We've got a lot of things to talk about next week. Uranus will turn direct at 10 degrees Taurus. We have the nodes changing signs. What else? We have a Cancer full moon to talk about. Like I said, so much going on in one week. But that said, follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. Many of you are my clients. You can book a session with me. You can sign up for my newsletter. I do put a newsletter out every Monday morning, so you can just kind of get a jump ahead on the week, getting any announcements. You can get my webinar, The Astrology of 2022. That's still available. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, listen to me on Spotify, YouTube. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman, and this has been your look at the astrology of January 10th through 16th, 2022. I will see you all next week. Bye.